Dr. Chen?
Thanks, Angel. Good morning. My name is John Chen from University of Calgary. Okay. This is the title of my presentation. Let me tell you the idea for my presentation, and then you don't have to go through all the presentations. Again, most of you would agree with me at the moment, or for the time being, and the oil and gas industry does not have a clear future. I think everyone would agree with me. In particular, our department suspended the petroleum engineering. In the past, when I taught a class, I used to have 50, 100 students. Now I only have a very few. I really feel very bad about it. So which means the government or the industry must do something about petroleum. And as you know, Alberta has trading barrels of heavy oil and bitumen. In particular, bitumen was produced by SAGD and through steam-assisted gravity drainage through steam injection. Again, how do you produce steam? From water and natural gas. And the bitumen production emits the most carbon or greenhouse emission to atmosphere. So now the government, on one hand, try to increase the carbon tax. In the next 9 years, the carbon tax per ton will be increased to 170 Canadian dollars. On the other hand, also, internationally, there's a target, so-called zero net carbon emissions. So if we do not do something, or you do not push the industrial government to do something, probably the oil and gas, in particular, the bitumen will be dead very soon. Why? Again, we cannot avoid the carbon tax. We cannot satisfy the net zero emission target. And what we are trying to do is ideas, strategies, so that the oil and gas industry will survive, will be alive, and will bloom again. What's our strategy? As I mentioned, the steam is produced from natural gas. The natural gas produces carbon, CO2, or greenhouse emissions. And our idea is we use hydrogen as a fuel. From the slide you see, when we use hydrogen to replace natural gas, we're going to reduce 76, almost 80% carbon emissions. And also remember you produce hydrogen, or sometimes also produce CO2, but we capture CO2 from the reforming much easier than from combustion. And also, at the same time, we're going to save a lot of money. We're going to, from the carbon tax increase. So our strategy is, remember, you have green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, green hydrogen. Green hydrogen also combines CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage. So CCUS on one hand is useful for fossil fuel. On the other hand, it's also very useful for blue hydrogen. So our ideas and also our future research focus will be CCUS plus hydrogen production. At the moment, 84% of hydrogen is produced from fossil fuels. And we're also working on hydrogen production from water splitting, from electricity, from sunshine, and from both of them. So that's the focus of probably the future. And why hydrogen? On one hand, hydrogen replaces natural gas. On the other hand, nitrogen is a renewable energy. 30% of the future energy will be hydrogen with hydrogen. That's why I'm presenting this one. So after you understand the idea, you don't have to go through all my slides. Okay. Why it's not working? Oh, okay. So very briefly, my outline is, again, I'm one of the NSOC chair, so I'm going to talk about the chair overall research. And then overall, what is the strategy to decarbonize the petroleum operation? In particular, the strategy to decarbonize bitumen operations. And again, my boss, Mr. Duke Anderson, always asks me, what after you present it, so what's next? Yeah, that's the potential. I think our ideas, innovations, methodologies, I think will be very useful for the industry and government, as I mentioned. So, as I mentioned, currently bitumen is produced by steam, and the high capital cost is about $50 to $90 per barrel, depends on companies. And also, as I mentioned a moment ago, is the bitumen production is the fastest growing source of carbon emissions. And also, the target, the Canadian target is reduce the carbon emission intensity by 30% by 2030. And by 2050, the entire country is going to achieve, or internationally achieve, the net zero emissions. So to address this issue, the government intends to increase the carbon tax from its current level, $30 per ton, to $170. So over the next 9 years. So that's really the issue. That's why the industry, even though the oil price is very high, $80, $90 per barrel, you don't see big investment. Those are the problems. Those are the problems. Carbon tax and the target. Those are the problems. And our overall research, our chair, in the past 4 or 5 years, we try to reduce the cost, reduce greenhouse emission by developing new recovery process, for instance, steam plus additive. The additive at the moment is solvent for the bitumen. And last year, at the same summit, I gave a talk about the lessons learned from research pilots on solvent steam co-injection. And then I was invited to write a paper. And this paper summarized all the industry activities up to the end of 2021. So if you want to understand more about the current pilot test or even some of the commercial project, you might refer to this paper. This paper was published in the April issue by the Canadian Heavy Oil Association. So this is we try to reduce the cost and the carbon emissions, but still we have a problem, as I mentioned. And also, again, steam plant solvent. We'll also look at it. One of the solvent is DIMI, the novel solvent. Again, the year before last year, I made this presentation. Again, now, for instance, there's a consortium by different companies, Synovus, Enbridge, Sunker, and different companies. They're looking at the DIMI. They're talking to us. They look into the papers we published. And also there's ConocoPhillips. They're looking at the DIMI as a solvent. So this, again, we made the presentation. The industry listened. So still, there are issues. There's still issues. Again, this is one of the possible solutions, but based on the issues I mentioned ago, that's me. So what our strategy? Our strategy I mentioned is CCUS plus blue gene. If the government listen to us, And if we push this one further, I think we got a good future. Got a future. And as I mentioned, CCUS is not only used in fossil fuel utilization, recovery, it's also used for the hydrogen production. So let me first focus very briefly summarize what we have done in the past for decarbonize the petroleum, oil and gas in general, and then I'm going to switch to bitumen. So in the past, again, a lot of people here did a lot of research about injecting CO2 underground to improve oil production. In the lab, we see 10% increase, incremental increase, 15%. If in the field, I always say, you see 1% increase, that's a discovery, a new big oil field. Not 15, 10%, only 1% increase. That way, look at how much oil we produce per day. Yeah, per day. So that's one area we have working on intensively. The second area we just remember in the past from the beginning of this century, industry looking at unconventional, look at the unconventional oil and gas, for instance, tight and shear and carbon method. And again, if you want to store CO2 or sequestrate CO2, CO2 can replaces methane in shear Rutherford. So you increase gas production, also store CO2, because the CO2 absorption capability is much stronger than emission in shear and in carbon. And also we had start underground co-location. Remember in the underground co-location, it created a lot of cavities. So use the cavities to store CO2. And also, this is our first proposed. You may, in the past, industry store CO2 in the supercritical state. We propose you store CO2 as a hydrate. This way, store CO2 is much safer and stores much more, 3 times more in terms of quantity if you store CO2 in hydrates. So this is what we have done in the past or traditionally what we have done. Maybe also a lot of people over here done the same research. But now we are proposing this one. Again, we haven't applied for patent yet. And we're proposing this one. We use blue hydrogen to carbonize the bitumen operation in Alberta. So, and remember, as I mentioned a moment ago, the decarbonization of the bitumen operation in Alberta is the top priority to meet the CO2 emission target. And the oil gas emits the most CO2, for instance, 191 million tons per annum. And we propose, and this research, and also not we propose, when we talk to government industry, we push this. Again, I think this is a good future. And also we did a lot of analysis about the CO2 emissions for different sectors. So what we do is, we use hydrogen to decarbon the heavy oil and oil sands operation in Alberta. So the heavy oil and oil sand operation produce 71, only most of from bitumen production, produce 71 million tons carbon, CO2. And we're going to replace natural gas by blue gene, can reduce CO2 emission by 76%. We did a lot of analysis. Again, this reliable analysis. So this replacement will be profitable. Remember, we're talking about the carbon tax increase. When the carbon tax exceeds 89 per ton, so the milestone year, not far away from 2027. At the very beginning I mentioned, we don't see a very clear future about the oil and gas industry. But if you follow this approach, I think we got a good future. We got a good future. Again, we also did analysis about the CO2 emission I mentioned. So this is methodologies, the workflow and the process. Again, there's a lot of good numbers you see. So there's a 162 project in Alberta alone, includes the coal production, thermal production, even mining. And there's almost 700 large facilities that emit CO2, Alberta. And also we analyze the CO2 storage sinks. For instance, oil pool, gas pool, and also the water aquifers. And again, we have to analyze the CO2 emissions, the bitumen producer, this gas emission. Also, as I mentioned, when you do the reforming, for instance, from natural gas, you also produce CO2. And then you gather all the data, analyze all the CO2 emissions, and then to see where we store them and how we utilize them, So this is the methodology, process, and workflow. And so this is some of the results, some of them. Based on the 162 heavy oil bitumen project in Alberta between 2020 to 2050, the heavy oil bitumen production will reach, let's say by 2030, 40 million barrels per day. And the CO2 emission will reach this much and at this rate. And if we use blue hydrogen to replace natural gas as a fuel, 1.5 trillion cubic feet per year will be saved. And this much hydrogen will be consumed for steam injection and for the heating. So these are the analysis. We did a lot of analysis about this one. And also, as I mentioned, assume the gas price is $3 MMBTU, and the CO2 capture rate is 90%, and the blue hydrogen production cost is this one. So when do all the finance analysis, the economic analysis, we'll see, as I mentioned, when the carbon tax rate is this one, in 2027, all the industry, no matter how they increase the carbon tax, they make profit. At the same time, they're going to reduce the CO2 emission by 80%, almost 80%. So that's win-win situation. So, as I mentioned, that's my idea. And again, the business opportunities, although mentioned, Alberta has 1.7 trillion barrels of bitumen underground. And there's large bitumen holdings and also the carbon emissions. So the opportunities to increase bitumen production at the same time to meet the target and also making the profit. Again, we start this when we made some effort in this area. In the future, we can continue on CCUS plus blue hydrogen. I think this is the good way. That if there's no other way, no potential way for the government industry to go, I think this is the right way. And I'd like to thank Energy Simulation in the past almost 15 years support. And also I'd like to thank my group. And in particular, this talk is prepared by one of my students, Kai, and all the other collaborators. And I also thank the other graduate students in other projects, STEAM plus Softened, and also the DME project, and also the collaborations with all the industry. And thank you all. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments? So I suppose you just have to gather the troops and sit down and have a session to talk about who is willing to do that. And I guess we'll have to wait for $89 per metric ton of CO2 tax or credit. And according, as you said, by 2030, Canadian government is talking about $170 per metric ton. So I suppose in the next several years, it's going to happen then, right?
Yeah, that's the policy they proposed, right?
Right, and then of course it's never too late or too early to actually plan on some research work around that, both economically and technically to get it done.
Yeah.
Okay. Any comments, questions? Yes.
Thank you very much. That was very, very interesting presentation. How do you see the future of green hydrogen in Canada, especially compared to blue?
The green hydrogen, again, there's a gray hydrogen that's you reforming without CCUS, and the blue hydrogen that's reforming with the CCUS. So the green hydrogen, you produce hydrogen from water. And at this moment, on the entire world market, only 4% of the hydrogen production is from the water splitting, only 4%. And I think the technology advanced very fast. So the real problem is to improve the conversion rate from the, for instance, from electricity, from the light into water. At the moment, it's really low. So it increases the cost and increase the stability and also increase the problems to scale it up. So I think, again, nowadays, there's a renewable energy like other areas. So as the renewable energy technology advance, the green hydrogen utilization will be increased too. Will be increased. So at this moment, the production of the green hydrogen production depends on the price of the electricity. That's the main problem. That's the main problem. Again, we are working on it. We have a subgroup working on it, working on the industry. So again, the technology very fast. Thanks.
Okay. 2 questions online. First one from Dr. Bob Gogner, our Energy Simulation Board of Directors member. He says, your economics for your proposal look even way better when considering today's price of gas. So you said about $3 per million BTU. Was it Canadian or US dollars?
That's US dollars probably.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. A question from Dr. Kovaid Dagani again, from formerly from Chevron, and his question is your economic analysis, in your economic analysis, what percentage of hydrogen generation and usage cost was associated with hydrogen storage and transportation?
I don't remember the exact number. And remember, the problem or the challenge with the CCUS is the CO2 capture. The transportation, storage, utilization is cheap. So you capture CO2 per ton will cost you $68 US dollars per ton capture CO2. So the main problem is the CO2 capture. It's not the transportation, it's not the storage. So main issues in the economic analysis is the CO2 capture. So if we want to make a good, there's a lot of students over here. If you want to make a good breakthrough, CO2 capture, that's the area you could make a breakthrough. The other areas, I think there are a lot of innovations already made.
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, from CNRL. Thank you for the talk. Yes, pretty much you answered, but I had a question how you compare the blue hydrogen. Your proposal pretty much adding a blue hydrogen facility to SAGD operation. But how would you compare if we capture from flue gas in your economic analysis that we capture CO2 in our steam gen rather than adding another facility?
Yeah, thanks, Amin. Good question. As I mentioned, that you capture CO2 from hydrogen, from blue hydrogen much cheaper than from reforming, much easier. I don't remember the exact number, but much easier and much cheaper. Yeah. Yes, we do have the numbers, the papers. We do have the number. We'll publish some of the papers. If you guys are interested in how to store the CO2 at the hydrates, and also this one, we did already publish the papers. Again, we publish the papers benefit the community. We don't apply for the patents. I think the future for the industry, for the government to go, I think some of our strategies are very useful, very useful.
Okay. Oh, that's another question here from Cave. Hydrogen storage and transportation safety issues might be a significant burden on cost. Would you agree?
I agree. That's another issue. So the storage hydrogen, again, you reforming, you produce hydrogen, no issue. The real issue is transportation and storage, in particular the safety, because you need high pressure to store the hydrogen. Yes, that's a big issue. That's another research area, still a lot of, again, innovation to be done. Yes, I agree.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Chen, for the talk.